Lost Ark is a smash success, one of the biggest in video game history, in fact, with only player-unknown battlegrounds drawing more people onto Steam at the same time ever. And the success is made all the more markant by the fact that this is Amazon Games' second MMO, with New Worlds having been released just months before being the exact opposite of Lost Ark, swiftly becoming one of the most legendary MMO failures in MMO history. If the Amazon executives have any sense, then every single employee at Amazon Games will right now be chained to their desk whilst they compare New World to Lost Ark point by point by point to figure out why one was an unbelievable success and the other an unbelievable failure. And a lot of it, unsurprisingly, comes down to the wildly different design philosophies of the Korean studio that made Lost Ark and the decidedly corrupted Western studio that made New World. We will be comparing the two games frequently throughout this video because, by God, they are like night and day. But first, let me real quick mention the technical difficulties, because on launch day, New World had overwhelmingly positive reviews, but now, with 77,000 reviews in total, the game has nosedived to a mixed rating purely because of technical incompetence. During the head start, I picked one of the less populated servers, figuring I'd learned my lesson from New World, and yet when the game released, voila, 7,000 to 12,000 people long queues. And that was when you could even get in to the queues, as on certain days, the servers were so overloaded, you couldn't even get in queue. Now, to be sure, launch day woes are hardly a rarity in the MMO market, but Amazon is one of the largest corporations in human history, literally $1 trillion business. They can afford to put up enough servers. These technical problems are, however, of course expected to be temporary. So let us move on to the real meat of things, the presentation, the design, and the philosophy behind Lost Ark. Now, Lost Ark is not a new game, mind you. It was first released in 2019 in December, if memory serves, in Korea, where it was a big success. It was later ported over to the Russian territories before finally arriving in the West, now in 2022, courtesy of Amazon. And you can see that it is not a Western release through and through, the presentation and the characters themselves being the most obvious thing. To further illustrate the problem, allow me to present you with this little snippet from The Terminally Woke. Lost Ark's depiction of female character feels a decade out of date, says the game's journalist, horrified that the characters aren't all wearing burqas. Tragically, this is a trend in Western game development, one that Lost Ark is refreshingly free of. Whereas over here, our RPGs take models that look like this and turn them into characters that look like this. In Korea, they still make attractive females look attractive. A weird strategy, I know, yet it seems to be a very successful one. Whereas in Amazon's New World, you need to work damned hard to make a character look human, much less attractive. Meanwhile, in Lost Ark, you need to work damn hard to make a character not attractive. And that, unsurprisingly, is the way it should be. People like playing attractive characters. People like interacting with attractive characters. A revolutionary concept, I know, yet nevertheless, the sales figures, Amazon, do not lie. And on that topic as well, we must address the forced diversity in Lost Ark, because Amazon is still a very woke company, though maybe Lost Ark might help with fixing that. Back when they were talking about launching Lost Ark in the West, they mentioned that they had to make certain changes to make it more welcoming to a Western audience. This is, of course, absolute undiluted bullshit, as the only people who were asking for these changes were the aforementioned outraged games journos, who complained the women aren't wearing enough clothing and aren't covering up their shames properly. Plus, unlike in New World where your women could have beards, that is yet another option mysteriously lacking from Lost Ark. And so what did Amazon do to make Lost Ark more diverse? Well, they did stuff like this, where they took a perfectly fine and attractive looking character and dumped a bucket of brown paint on her, judging by the reflection. I mean, this isn't even good. This isn't even a new character made in the in-game editor to look like the old one, but with a different skin color. It is merely an objectively worse figure. This is not what the West wants, Amazon. And it's also telling to see that the only two controversies surrounding Lost Ark, beyond the technical issues, is wokeists complaining that the characters are too sexy, and the rest of us complaining that Amazon ruined a handful of the sexy characters. So the lesson here is quite self-explanatory. If you've got sexy characters in your video game, keep them. And if you don't have sexy characters in your video game, make some. You'll do far better as a result. But it's not just in the character department that Lost Ark stands leagues above its comparative competitor, New World. It's also that Lost Ark is an actual fantastical world. It has knights, it has magic, it has monster, it has flying things, enormous giant stone statues that come to life. It's got elementals, it's got adventure. It pulls you in, it makes you go, wow, that's cool as all hell. There's a portion of the game where you get shrunk down to talk to little elven creatures as you walk through the undergrowth of a forest, seeing enormous watches and boots used by the local populace. It is so cool and so fantastical. Meanwhile, New World is the most misleading video game title in human history. It is the oldest, most settled, most boring world I have ever played. There are cities everywhere, flourishing, massive walled communities. There are roads all over the place, half of them paved. The populace live within these walls and seemingly do not give two farts about what's happening outside. Oh, there's a zombie apocalypse going on? I don't really care. Go get me some deer hides, would you? There is no sense of urgency, of drama, or adventure anywhere in New World. There was a small, brief moment there where I thought to myself, hold on, is the story finally picking up like 20 hours into the game? But swiftly I realized that no, it wasn't. I was fighting one new type of zombie and thought to myself, gasp, a new mechanic? Could this be the time when the game finally comes alive? No, because then I continued fighting that enemy for the next 20 levels. Meanwhile, in New World, I fight pirates, I fight stone golems, I fight ants, I fight enormous beetles, I fight walking cactuses, I fight machines, I fight everything you could possibly imagine, and I do it not with a piddly sword or an axe or with a musket or with half-hearted magic. I do it with meteors from the sky, with enormous fireballs, with swords bigger than I am, and I don't fight one or two enemies like in Lost World, where if you pull 3 zombies, you're really pushing your luck. No, I fight them by the dozen at the time. New World makes you feel like a walking natural disaster, like a sentient artillery piece, mowing through hordes of enemies and defeating powerful bosses the sizes of mountains. New World makes you feel like just another pathetic farmer barely scraping by in the zombie apocalypse. And this is despite the fact that New World was probably a larger game in terms of the sheer area you as a character could wander through, but it was so empty. There were a lot of mechanics in New World, but none of them were particularly interesting or engaging. In Lost Ark, when you're doing mining or woodcutting or any of the other trades, you do those whilst blowing up hordes of enemies. You do that whilst engaging in questing and leveling rapidly through the story. In New World, you had to take hours out of your leveling experience to go grind out thousands of materials required to make anything. This also meant that the drive and the competition for materials was noteworthy, as people had to find the best circulations to wander around to gather thousands of metal ore so that they could create a handful of rifles, only so that they could do this again and again and again. Due to long respawn times of resources, well, this led to very predatory and toxic play culture, where people would even drag over mobs to hit someone that was mining a node just so they themselves could mine it, because you needed that 15-minute respawn time metal. In Lost Ark, you know what happens if you click on a tree that somebody else is cutting down? You help them cut down the tree, and it goes faster for both parties, and you gain the exact same rewards. It's almost painful how badly designed New World was in comparison when it comes to resource gathering. I suppose we could also launch into a tirade on just how dreadfully organized New World's economy was as a whole, as it was practically primed to crash from the very beginning. But that would be a slight deviation. Although, perhaps that could be a lesson as well, Amazon. Don't do that again. And whilst we're tangentially on the topic of pacing and skills as well, Lost Ark gives you a ton of skills right off the bat. They're powerful, they make huge explosions, they allow you to juggle hordes of enemies, and you level really quickly. You get to endgame in Lost Ark in somewhere between 10 to 20 odd hours or so. You won't even have hit the mid-game of New World by then, and yet you will have experienced way more in Lost Ark in that same amount of time. And then you can get to the end game, where you get to play around with the dungeons and the PvP proper. PvP was another thing. To be fair, Lost Ark could use more PvP, and there are definitely some balance concerns as well, but compared to New World's PvP, which was either open world PvP, where the current meta weapon of the day reigned absolutely unquestionably supreme, or PvP gated behind guild activities, I much prefer the Lost Ark variant. And as a further point on that as well, in New World I frequently had trouble finding out exactly what I was supposed to be doing beyond simply grinding my way up to a higher level or grinding resources so I could grind out one of the crafting skills. Whereas in Lost Ark, if anything, there's almost a little bit too many things to do, as it can be a little confusing to be dumped into a several years old MMO and get to grips with all of the mechanics, all of the currencies, all of the customization, all of the skills, and all of the various game modes too. But at the end of the day, that is a good problem to have. And perhaps one of the most important key points for Amazon to remember from all of this, beyond sexy characters are good, is that Lost Ark makes you feel like the hero of your own story. A grand story, a great story, where you are a powerful force within that universe. New World makes you feel like a homeless hobo, constantly low on money, wandering through a large hostile world filled with zombies and a handful of personality-less characters that slap you with fetch quests now and then. And there as well, the fetch quests. Lost Ark is not perfect in this regard by any stretch of the imagination. There are a damn near frightening quantity, honestly, of fetch quests and FedEx quests, where you simply wander around a village for extended periods of time, picking up things, digging up things, doing mundane tasks for random people. But at least you are rewarded for it. You get money, you get loads of experience, you get levels, you might even get skill potions to unlock relatively rare skill points. You get stuff, and it's all quite linear. You are moved through the levels, through the maps, in an easy to understand way. If the game is pointing you to go a direction, then in all due likelihood, that's the direction you need to go. That's what all of the quests are. That's what all of the rewards are. And there is very little, if damn near any, backtracking. Whereas again, in New World, you had to wander back and forth and forth and back and forth, walking all the way with no mount. Whereas again, in Lost Ark, say it with me, you get a mount almost immediately, because just walking is not fun. And there's something you should consider as well, Amazon. Maybe you should make your games fun, instead of designed by committee dreary mediocrity, a la New World. Just an idea. And in reality, all of this could be summarized in one very simple sentence. Amazon, please, we want more Korea and less California. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for listening, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.